Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Part 44, Emergence as Scale-Stable Expression of Phi Pattern. 1. The most abused word in thought. Emergence is one of the most abused words in human thought. People use it whenever they see something surprising, complicated, or beautiful. A crowd moves like a wave, and they call it emergence. A brain thinks and they call it emergence. A market crashes, life appears, consciousness wakes, galaxies form, language evolves, and the same word is thrown over the scene like a blanket. But a blanket can hide as much as it covers. In Phi pattern science, we cannot allow a word to replace an explanation. We need discipline. We need to know exactly what emergence is, what it is not, and what must be shown before an emergence claim becomes public knowledge. The first thing to say is simple: emergence is not magic. Nothing truly appears from nowhere. If a pattern becomes visible at a larger scale, this does not mean reality has broken its own continuity. It means that some relational organization that was not publicly readable before has become stable enough, comparable enough, and invariant rich enough to support a new public claim. What emerges was present in potential. It was not yet legible in the earlier access regime. The new scale did not create reality out of nothing. It made part of reality readable in a new way. A simple, everyday example: the forest from the trees. Stand among the trees. You see individual trunks, branches, leaves. You hear birds, feel the breeze, notice the play of light. Now rise above the forest. From an airplane, you see the forest as a whole, its shape, its boundaries, its patches of different colors. A new pattern has appeared: the forest canopy, the distribution of tree types, the edge where forest meets field. Did this pattern exist when you were among the trees? In one sense, yes. The forest was always there. But in another sense, no. The canopy pattern was not legible from within. It only becomes visible at the larger scale. This is emergence. The pattern was always present in potential. Scale transition makes it actual. Another example: the flock of birds. A flock of starlings wheels across the evening sky. Thousands of birds move together, forming shapes that flow and shift like a single organism. From the perspective of a single bird, what is happening? It follows simple rules: stay close to neighbors, avoid collisions, match speed. It does not see the flock shape. The flock shape emerges at the larger scale. It is not visible to any individual bird. It becomes visible only when we step back and observe the whole. This is emergence. The pattern was not in the individuals, it was in their relations, and those relations become legible only at the collective scale. What emergence is? Let us define emergence precisely. Emergence is the appearance of stable, lawful Phi pattern structure at a scale or access regime where new invariants become publicly certifiable. This means new invariants become certifiable that were not certifiable at prior scales. The pattern is stable, it persists across relevant transformations. It is lawful, it follows rules that can be stated and tested. It becomes public, it can be shared, checked, and built upon by multiple observers. Emergence is not the creation of something from nothing. It is the legibility of something that was always there in potential. An example across scales: the hurricane. A hurricane is a classic example of emergence. At the scale of individual air molecules, there is no hurricane, just random motion, collisions, transfers of energy. At the scale of weather systems, the hurricane appears, a coherent structure with an eye, spiral bands, enormous power. The hurricane emerges from atmospheric conditions. It was not created ex nihilo. It was always present in potential, in the warm ocean water, the Coriolis force, the atmospheric instability. Scale transition makes it actual. The hurricane is stable, it persists for days. It is lawful, it follows fluid dynamics, thermodynamics. It is public, we can observe, track, predict it. This is emergence. What emergence is not. Because emergence is so often misused, we must be very clear about what it is not. Emergence is not naming. Calling something emergent does not make it so. Giving a new label to an old pattern is not emergence. Emergence is not storytelling. Telling a narrative about how something appears does not demonstrate emergence. Stories are not science. Emergence is not semantic projection. Projecting meaning onto a pattern does not make it emergent. Meaning is interpretation, not emergence. Emergence is not hand waving. Saying it just emerges is not an explanation. It is a way to avoid explaining. Emergence is not a license to invent new primitives. You cannot introduce new fundamental entities at each scale and call it emergence. The new pattern must be grounded in source structure. Emergence is not ex nihilo generation. Nothing comes from nothing. Every emergent pattern must have a source. Emergence is disciplined, not magical. 7. Emergence as access condition stabilization. Here is a deeper way to understand emergence. A pattern is emergent when relational organization becomes sufficiently stable. It persists through perturbations. Sufficiently comparable. It can be recognized across different instances. Sufficiently invariant rich. It has properties that can be certified. These conditions were not met at the prior scale. The pattern was there in potential, but it was not legible. Scale transition, coarse graining, new windows, new access regimes makes it legible. Emergence is excess condition stabilization. 8. The crowd example. Imagine a crowd in a stadium. At the fine scale, we see individuals standing, sitting, turning, shouting, lifting arms. At that scale, the scene may look messy. But then a stadium wave passes around the arena. Suddenly, a higher order pattern becomes visible. The crowd behaves as a coordinated moving form. Again, nothing supernatural has happened. No new primitive has entered reality. The people were already there. Their local interactions and timing made possible a new stable readout at the collective level. The wave in the crowd is emergent. It can be filmed, measured, timed, and reproduced under similar conditions. It has public structure. 9. The ant colony. A single ant does not make an ant colony. Even a few ants may show little more than individual wandering. But when many ants interact through trails, chemical signals, and repeated local rules, the colony begins to display higher order structure. Paths form, labor divides, food routing stabilizes, nest architecture appears. A colony level organization becomes publicly readable. This is emergence. The colony is not a ghost floating above the ants. It is a real pattern grounded in ant interactions, visible at a scale where new invariants become stable. 10. Distinguishing apparent from lawful emergence. Here is one of the most important distinctions in Part 44. Apparent emergence is an artifact of coarse graining, hidden selection, or threshold effects. It looks like new structure, but it is actually a product of the way we are looking. Lawful emergence is stable under declared coarse graining, reproducible across observers, and grounded in source structure. How do we tell them apart? Apparent emergence disappears when we change the coarse graining. Lawful emergence persists across reasonable variations in access regime. Apparent emergence is not reproducible by different methods. Lawful emergence is. Apparent emergence has no clear source pathway. Lawful emergence can be traced back to underlying dynamics. The blurry photograph example. Take a blurry photograph. From far away, someone sees a face in the image. Is the face emergent? Maybe. But maybe the image has been filtered, smoothed, or contrast enhanced in a way that creates the appearance. If the processing steps are hidden, we may mistake artifact for discovery. The apparent face may not survive replay with declared methods. That would be apparent emergence, not lawful emergence. A lawful emergence claim would require showing the source image, the processing path, the scale transition, and the stability of the face-like pattern across independent observations and declared transformations. The data science example. A researcher groups complex data into categories and discovers a striking high-level trend. But if the grouping rules were chosen after seeing the result, or if a smoothing erased inconvenient variation, the new macro pattern may be partly an artifact of the coarse graining. Hidden selection can manufacture the illusion of emergence. That is why Part 43 was so important. Without declared loss accounting, emergence claims become unsafe. Lawful emergence requires declared coarse graining, not silent averaging. The emergence checklist. Because emergence is so often misused, it requires strict discipline. An emergence claim must include source structure or lawful generative pathway. Where does the emergent pattern come from? What underlying dynamics produce it? Declared transformation or scale transition. How do we move from the source to the emergent pattern? What coarse graining? What new window? Persistence of higher order structure. Does the emergent pattern last? Is it stable across repeated observation? 4. Identity criteria at emergent scope. What makes this emergent pattern the same across instances? What invariants define it? 5. Loss accounting. If we coarse grain to see the pattern, what did we lose? Declare it. 6. Uncertainty and boundary honesty. What are the limits of the emergent pattern? Where does it break down? 7. Public reproducibility. Can others observe the same emergent pattern under similar conditions? 8. Falsification conditions. What would show that the emergence claim is wrong? Without these, an emergence claim is not certifiable. 14. The bread example. Flour, water, yeast, and salt in a bowl. At first, it is just a mixture. Over time, under kneading, waiting, and heat, a loaf of bread appears. Bread has properties the ingredients did not have separately: crust, texture, aroma, sliceability. We naturally say the loaf emerges from the ingredients and the process. Now apply the checklist. Source structure: flour, water, yeast, salt, their chemical properties. Transformation: mixing, kneading, fermentation, baking. Persistence: the loaf lasts for days. Identity criteria: what counts as bread? Crust, crumb structure, edible. Loss accounting: we lose information about individual flour particles, yeast cells. Uncertainty: baking conditions vary, results may differ. Reproducibility: others can follow the recipe and get bread. Falsification: if following the recipe never yields bread, the emergence claim fails. This is emergence without mystification. 15. The emergence of life. The emergence of life from non-living chemistry is one of the most profound examples. A responsible emergence claim would need to specify source structure, prebiotic chemistry, organic molecules, energy sources, transformation, self-organization, replication, natural selection. Persistence. Life persists across generations, evolves. Identity criteria. What counts as life? Metabolism, reproduction, adaptation. Loss accounting. What chemical details are lost when we describe organisms rather than molecules? Uncertainty. What we do not know about the transition. Reproducibility. Can we recreate life in the lab? Partially, so far. This is the discipline emergence requires. Consciousness as emergent consciousness is often claimed to be emergent from neural activity. If this is true, then consciousness is a new pattern that becomes legible at the scale of whole brain organization. It is not a separate substance. It is not a ghost in the machine. It is the neural activity, organized and read at the scale where new invariants, self-awareness, reflection, meaning, become public. This does not make consciousness less real. It makes it real in the same way that hurricanes and traffic jams are real, as emergent patterns from underlying dynamics. But the claim requires the full checklist: source structure, neurons, networks; transformation, scale transition; persistence, consciousness endures; identity criteria, what counts as conscious; loss accounting, what neural details are lost; uncertainty, reproducibility, falsification. This is hard. That is why emergence is hard. Emergence preserves pattern-first ontology. Here is a crucial philosophical point. Emergence is new readout, not new primitive by default. When we observe an emergent pattern, we are not discovering a new fundamental substance. We are reading the same underlying pattern at a new scale. The pattern layer remains primary. Emergence does not introduce new ontological kinds. It introduces new legibility. This is not reductionism. It is not saying the emergent pattern is unreal. It is saying that reality is layered, and each layer is real, but all layers are patterns. The hurricane is real, but it is not a new substance floating above the air molecules. It is the air molecules organized and read at a larger scale. Examples across scales. Let us gather several cross-scale examples into one continuous picture. Physics. A crystal emerges when many atoms settle into repeating lattice relations. The lattice is not visible in a single atom. It becomes readable only when many atoms align under the right conditions. Chemistry. Water molecules alone are not a wave, but when huge numbers interact, a stable surface pattern becomes visible, a wave moving across the sea. Biology. A forest climate emerges from countless trees exchanging moisture, shade, nutrients, and airflow. At the level of one leaf, there is no forest microclimate. At the level of the whole system, a stable environmental pattern appears. Economics. Inflation is emergent. No single coin, purchase, or shop contains inflation by itself. Inflation becomes publicly readable only when many exchanges form a stable macro pattern in prices across time. Linguistics. Grammar is emergent. One sound is not a grammar. One isolated word is barely enough. But across many utterances, stable relational rules become visible. These rules are real, public, and testable at the language scale, even though they are enacted locally by speakers. A melody is not in a single note. It emerges from the relations between nodes across time. Society. A nation is not in a single citizen. It emerges from the interactions of millions, organized by institutions, laws, and shared identity. Each of these is emergence. Each is lawful. Each requires the same discipline. The emergence principle. Now we can state the principle that organizes part 44. Emergence is a disciplined way Phi pattern structure becomes newly readable, not a break in reality. What emerges was present in potential, now made legible. This means emergence requires source accounting, no ex nihilo. Emergence requires declared transformation or scale transition. Emergence requires stability, comparability, invariance. Emergence requires reproducibility. Emergence is not magic, not naming, not storytelling, not new primitives. The rigor layer, the emergence gate. Emergence gets its own gate, the emergence gate. The emergence gate asks, is the source structure or generative pathway identified? Is the transformation or scale transition declared? Is the emergent pattern stable and persistent? Are identity criteria at the emergent scope specified? Is loss accounted for if coarse graining involved? Is uncertainty disclosed? Is the emergence reproducible? Are falsification conditions stated? If the answer is no, if source is missing, if transformation is undeclared, if persistence is not shown, the emergence claim cannot be certified. The emergence gate requires source pathway, where the emergent pattern comes from, scale transition, how we move from source to emergent, persistence demonstration, the pattern lasts, identity criteria, what defines the emergent pattern, loss accounting, what is discarded in the transition, uncertainty disclosure, limits of the claim, reproducibility evidence, others can observe it, falsification conditions, what would disprove it. Additional gates. Several related gates reinforce this discipline. The source pathway gate verifies that the source of the emergent pattern is identified. The scale transition gate ensures that the move between scales is declared. The persistence gate checks that the emergent pattern endures. The identity at scope gate ensures that the emergent pattern can be recognized as the same across instances. The loss uncertainty gate confirms that loss and uncertainty are accounted for. The reproducibility gate ensures that others can observe the same emergence. The falsifiability gate ensures that the claim can be tested. Firewalls. What emergence discipline blocks? Emergence discipline installs several critical firewalls. Firewall 1. No treating emergence as magic. Emergence is lawful, not mysterious. It must be explained. Firewall 2. No ex nihilo emergence. Every emergent pattern must have a source. Firewall 3. No conflating apparent with lawful emergence. Artifacts of coarse graining are not emergence. Firewall 4. No using emergence to invent new primitives. Emergence does not create new fundamental substances. Firewall 5. No emergence without source accounting. If you cannot trace it, it is not certified emergence. Firewall 6. No emergence without stability demonstration. If the pattern does not persist, it is not emergent, it is transient. Firewall 7. No emergence without reproducibility. If others cannot see it, it is not public. Firewall 8. No emergence without falsifiability. If you cannot say what would disprove it, it is not science. These firewalls keep emergence honest. 23. Refusal conditions. We refuse to certify an emergence claim if source structure or pathway is missing, Transformation or scale transition is undeclared. Persistence is not demonstrated. Identity criteria are absent. Loss is unaccounted. Uncertainty is hidden. Reproducibility is absent. Falsification conditions are missing. Emergence is treated as magic or ex nihilo. Refusal here is not pedantry. It is protecting the integrity of one of the most misused concepts in science. 24. Why this matters. Beyond science, emergence in life. Emergence is not only for science, it is for how we understand everything, from societies to selves. A society emerges from individual people. It has patterns, culture, economy, governance that are not visible in any single person. These patterns are real, they shape our lives, but they are not separate substances. They are the people, organized and read at the collective scale. A friendship emerges from interactions between two people. It has patterns, trust, history, shared meaning, that are not in either individual alone. The friendship is real, it shapes both people, but it is not a separate entity. It is the relationship, organized and read at the dyadic scale. A self emerges from the activity of a brain. It has patterns, identity, memory, agency, that are not visible in any single neuron. The self is real, it experiences, chooses, acts, but it is not a ghost. It is the brain, organized and read at the whole person scale. Understanding emergence helps us avoid two mistakes. The first mistake is reductionism, saying that only the smallest scale is real. The hurricane is real, the society is real, the self is real. The second mistake is mysticism, saying that emergent patterns are separate substances floating above the world. They are not. They are the world, organized and read at new scales. Emergence teaches us that reality is layered and each layer is real, but all layers are patterns. A final image, the ocean and the waves. The ocean has waves. Waves emerge from the interaction of wind and water. Are waves real? Yes, you can see them, feel them, surf them. Are waves separate from the ocean? No, they are the ocean in a particular configuration. Emergence is like that. The wave is not a new substance, it is the water organized. But at the scale of the wave, new patterns appear, height, period, break, that are not visible at the scale of individual water molecules. The wave is real, the ocean is real. Both are patterns. Closing insight. We began with comparability. From phi emerged distinction. From distinction emerged pattern. From pattern emerged identity, persistence, interaction, measurement, memory, modeling, prediction, learning, intervention, computation, information, publicness, scale, coarse graining. And now, emergence. Emergence is not a new ingredient. It is the appearance of new patterns at new scales. It is what happens when relational organization becomes stable enough, comparable enough, invariant rich enough to support public identity claims. It is disciplined. It is lawful. It is not magic. We now move forward. With emergence understood, we can ask an even deeper question. What happens when patterns turn their modeling capacity toward themselves? That is recursive self-modeling. That is part 45. Always, peace be upon you.